Husband threw out his amnesiac wife after an accident, unaware of her $500 million inheritance. He threw his wife out after a terrible accident stole her memory, calling her useless and unworthy of his name. Then walked back inside arm in arm with Vanessa, the family friend who once toasted their union at the wedding table. He never knew Emily carried a fortune that could change generations. "Stay out of my sight, Emily. You're nothing but a burden. Pack your things and get out. I refuse to waste my life on a woman who can't even remember who I am." Those were the venomous words Daniel Carter spat as Emily stood trembling, her mind a blank slate, her body still weak from the crash. Instead of standing by her, he abandoned her. Instead of love, he delivered humiliation and rejection in the hour she needed him most. He believed she was finished. But what he never imagined was that the same woman he cast aside as forgotten would rise with a power beyond his reach. A rise that would expose his betrayal, shatter his pride, and bring him to his knees. Sometimes the memories you lose are the chains that free you. Sometimes the woman you treat as nothing becomes the shadow that haunts your every step. This is not just another story of betrayal. It is the cry of a wife despised in her weakest moment, the scars of humiliation turned into strength, and the warning the world too often forgets. Never despise the broken, for they may rise higher than you could ever dream. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. As we step into this story, I ask from my heart, don't just hear her pain and scroll away. Subscribe now, and in the comments share where you're watching from. So Emily and every woman betrayed knows she is not alone. The sound of shattering glass ripped through the night. Emily Carter's car spun out of control, headlights flickering like dying stars as the vehicle skidded across the road and slammed into a pole with a deafening crash. Metal twisted, the windshield splintered, and silence followed. A silence broken only by the hiss of steam and the weak cry that escaped her lips before she slumped unconscious. Neighbors poured out of their homes. Karen Lewis, always eager for gossip, shrieked louder than anyone else. "Somebody call an ambulance. She's not moving." Her hands flew to her mouth, but her eyes were sharp, already thinking of what story she might carry to the next morning's tea table. The paramedics worked quickly. Emily's chest rose and fell faintly, her skin pale under the flashing red lights. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, the locket Daniel once gave her slipped from her neck. It struck the pavement, snapping in two. No one noticed the broken jewelry, yet in that tiny sound, fate whispered, something precious had been fractured beyond repair. At the hospital, hours later, Dr. Samuel Hayes stepped out of surgery. His coat was stained with the long night's effort, his eyes shadowed by exhaustion, but his voice carried calm authority. Daniel Carter rose from his seat, his expression a mask of forced concern. "She survived," Dr. Hayes began, "but the trauma has wiped her memory. She won't remember who you are, her family, or even her own name. The road back will be long, but with care, patience, and love, there is hope." "Memory loss?" Daniel repeated, his tone flat. His jaw tightened. "So she's nothing? A stranger?" "She is your wife," Dr. Hayes reminded him firmly. "Her mind is fragile now, but she needs you, more than ever." Emily awoke days later, her eyes searching the room in confusion. She looked at Daniel as if he were a passerby. Her voice trembled. Who are you?" Daniel's lips curled bitterly, but Emily's hand, weak and trembling, still reached for his. You feel familiar," she whispered. Even stripped of her memory, Emily's devotion lingered. She would follow him with her gaze as he moved, searching for comfort in the man whose face her heart vaguely remembered, even if her mind could not. When he walked into her hospital room, her whole body seemed to relax. When he walked out, panic clouded her face until nurses soothed her. But Daniel grew cold. Each question she asked wounded his pride. "Where do I belong?" she would ask softly. "You belong at home," he would reply curtly. "And where is home?" His patience snapped. "Stop asking. Just stop." In the quiet hours, Emily clutched the broken locket the nurses had returned to her, running her fingers along the jagged edge. Though her memory was gone, she pressed it to her heart as if it still carried a piece of the love she once knew. Her devotion became visible in the smallest ways. She would sit quietly by Daniel's side, watching him eat, trying to mimic his movements so he would not feel embarrassed by her forgetfulness. She would smile faintly when he entered, her eyes lighting up, even though he rarely returned the warmth. At night, when nurses dimmed the lights, she whispered prayers she barely remembered, asking God to bless the husband whose name slipped through her mind. Daniel, however, saw none of it. To him, every forgotten word, every lost memory was proof that Emily was no longer the woman he had married. Karen Lewis, peering from her window across the neighborhood, carried her version of events to anyone who would listen. "She's broken now," she whispered gleefully to a neighbor. "Poor Daniel. Imagine being stuck with someone who doesn't even know who he is. A burden, that's what she is. Dead weight." At the mansion, Robert Carter, Daniel's father, echoed the same venom in private. "You deserve better, son. A strong wife, not a crippled mind. Emily is finished." Emily did not hear those words. She only felt Daniel's coldness, but still she clung to the hope that her heart was not lying. In her silence, she traced the broken locket and whispered, "Why do I ache for someone I cannot remember? Why does my heart tell me to trust him?" But Daniel's heart had already started drifting. And when Vanessa Moore, the family friend who had once toasted their love at the wedding table, leaned close to comfort him, Daniel did not push her away. Fate was moving fast, and Emily's devotion would not be enough to save her from the storm that was about to break. Next, the mansion gates will echo with betrayal. The sound of shattering porcelain echoed through the dining hall as Daniel slammed his cup onto the table. Tea spilled across the polished wood, dripping down like wasted time. Emily flinched at the noise, her spoon falling from her hand. "For heaven's sake, Emily!" Daniel snapped, his voice sharp. "You can't even hold a spoon without making a mess. How much longer am I supposed to put up with this?" Emily's hands trembled. Her memory was gone, but her devotion remained. She lifted the napkin slowly, trying to wipe the spill before him. I'm sorry, Daniel. I will do better. Please don't be angry." Her soft voice, instead of soothing him, only fueled his bitterness. To Daniel, every mistake reminded him of the woman she no longer was. Vanessa Moore, the family friend who had begun visiting almost daily, slid her chair closer to Daniel with an easy smile. "Daniel, don't stress yourself," she said sweetly, her hand brushing his arm. "She's been through so much. Maybe what she needs is rest." Her tone dripped with false kindness, but her eyes glimmered with satisfaction. Emily stared at Vanessa with a faint tilt of her head. The face seemed familiar, yet distant, like a dream she couldn't place. She whispered, "Were you at my wedding?" Vanessa's lips curved into a smirk. "Yes, dear," she said, her voice syrupy. "I was right there, smiling for both of you." Robert Carter, Daniel's father, walked into the room just in time to hear. A tall, rigid man with a face carved from stone, he sneered at Emily. "A wife who cannot even remember her wedding day? Pathetic. Daniel, my son, you deserve a real woman, someone who can carry your name with pride. This one is finished." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She turned toward Daniel, hoping he would defend her. Her heart longed for the man who once vowed to protect her. But Daniel stayed silent, his jaw hard, his gaze fixed on Vanessa. Later, when the mansion grew quiet, Emily wandered through the corridors like a stranger. The walls were familiar, yet hollow. She touched framed photographs, searching for herself in the captured smiles, but the faces blurred in her mind. She whispered, "Why can't I remember? Why does he look at me like I'm already gone?" In his study, Daniel poured himself a drink. Vanessa leaned against the desk, her voice low and tempting. "She will never be the wife you need again, Daniel. Why suffer? You deserve happiness. You deserve me." Robert's words from earlier rang in his head. You deserve better. By the time Emily returned to the room, Daniel's decision was already forming like ice in his heart. "Go to bed," he said coldly, not looking at her. "You're no use to me tonight." Emily lowered her gaze. She said nothing, only walked away, her broken locket pressed tightly in her palm. Yet inside her chest, her heart still whispered the same prayer. "Please, Daniel, remember the love we once shared." But prayers would not stop the storm gathering over her head. For the next time she stepped outside the mansion, it would not be as Daniel's wife. It would be as a discarded burden, thrown out into the streets. And at the mansion gates, betrayal would scream louder than her devotion. The mansion gates slammed open with a metallic crash. Daniel's furious voice echoed down the driveway. "Get out of my house, Emily. You're nothing to me now." Neighbors froze. Karen Lewis, who had been trimming her flowers, dropped her clippers in delight at the unfolding drama. Children peeked from behind their mothers. Curious whispers spread as faces pressed against fences. Emily stumbled forward, clutching a small suitcase that Daniel had shoved into her hands. Her eyes were wide, confused, and wet with tears. She shook her head, her voice trembling. "Please, Daniel, don't do this. I don't remember everything, but I know I'm your wife. I know I'm meant to be by your side." Daniel's face hardened, every trace of compassion gone. "Wife?" His voice thundered, drawing gasps from the crowd. "You are nothing but a broken memory. Dead weight. A curse." Vanessa Moore stepped forward from behind him, dressed neatly, her lips curled in satisfaction. She slipped her arm into Daniel's with a confidence that mocked Emily's weakness. "Daniel, let's not waste time. She has no place here." The humiliation cut deeper than any wound. Emily's knees wobbled, her suitcase slipping to the ground with a dull thud. She looked at Vanessa through blurred vision, her voice cracking. You were at my wedding. You smiled with us. How could you?" Vanessa leaned close, her whisper sharp enough for Emily to hear. "Because I was always meant to take your place." The crowd gasped. Karen Lewis whispered to another neighbor. "Did you hear that? Vanessa, the family friend. Oh, this will spread faster than fire." Robert Carter stood proudly on the porch, clapping his hands slowly. "Well done, son. Finally, you've rid yourself of that useless woman. A Carter needs strength, not weakness." His words, cold and sharp, fell like stones onto Emily's chest. Emily bent down to pick up her suitcase, her fingers trembling. The broken locket slipped from her pocket and landed on the stones. She stared at it, her tears dripping onto the cracked metal. In that moment, her reflection shimmered back at her from the jagged surface. A stranger she no longer knew. Her heart cried out, but her lips whispered only one plea. "Daniel, please don't leave me like this." Daniel's hand tightened around Vanessa's as he pointed toward the open street. "Go, and don't ever come back. From today, you are nothing to me." The gates groaned as they swung shut behind her, the iron bars closing like prison doors. Emily stood on the outside, suitcase by her side, the eyes of the community burning into her back. Her humiliation was complete. She took one trembling step onto the empty road, her body swaying as though the ground itself had betrayed her. The whispers followed like shadows. Broken, abandoned, cursed. Her vision blurred, her legs buckled. And then, in front of the watching crowd, Emily collapsed onto the pavement, her broken locket lying inches from her hand. The neighbors gasped, but none rushed to help. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Vanessa's satisfied smirk framed in the mansion doorway. And so Emily's fall into the dust was complete. But fate was not finished with her, for from the roadside a stranger's hand would soon reach out, and with it the faint spark of a new beginning. Rain began to fall as Emily lay crumpled on the pavement, her body shaking, her breath shallow. Her suitcase lay half open beside her, clothes spilling into the dirt. The broken locket glistened under the raindrops like a tear frozen in metal. The neighbors who had gathered moments earlier whispered among themselves, but none stepped forward. Karen Lewis crossed her arms, muttering, "Poor thing, but what can anyone do?" Daniel was right. She's finished. Others nodded, pitying but distant, unwilling to touch what they called bad luck. A car passed by, slowing just enough for the driver to look. Then it sped off, leaving Emily in the growing storm. Her lips quivered as she tried to call out, "Help! Someone! Please!" But her voice was too weak, drowned by the rain. Then footsteps approached. A woman with a plain scarf tied around her head and a faded coat bent down quickly. "Oh, dear Lord," she whispered. "Child, what have they done to you?" This was Harriet Cole, a caregiver in the community known for her gentle heart and quiet strength. She had little money, but she carried more compassion than most of the wealthy around her. Kneeling beside Emily, she lifted her gently from the ground. "You'll catch your death out here. Come with me. I'll not leave you to suffer." Emily, barely conscious, blinked at the stranger. Her words slurred. "Who are you?" "A friend," Harriet said softly, tucking a blanket she carried around Emily's shoulders. "That's enough for now." With effort, Harriet carried her toward a small, weathered house at the edge of the neighborhood. Neighbors whispered again, some shaking their heads. "Harriet's crazy, taking in a broken woman. She'll regret it." But Harriet ignored them, focused only on the fragile figure in her arms. Inside Harriet's modest home, the contrast to the mansion was stark. The walls were plain, the furniture simple, but warmth lingered in every corner. She placed Emily on a small bed, dried her with a towel, and set a steaming cup of tea beside her. For the first time since the accident, Emily felt safe. Her hands trembled as she lifted the cup. She sipped slowly, her eyes brimming with tears. Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Harriet smiled gently. "Because no one deserves to be thrown out like garbage. You may have lost your memory, but I see your pain. And pain deserves kindness." Emily clutched the broken locket tightly, her voice breaking. He said I was nothing. Am I really nothing now?" Harriet reached over, taking her hand firmly. "Listen to me. You are not nothing. You are a woman, still breathing, still alive. Whatever they told you, it's a lie. You will rise again." Emily's tears spilled freely as she whispered, "Rise again." The words felt foreign yet comforting, like a seed planted in broken soil. But outside Harriet's window, unseen by both women, Karen Lewis lingered, peeking through the curtain before rushing away to spread gossip. "Did you see? That poor, useless wife is hiding in Harriet's house now." And across town, Vanessa leaned against Daniel's shoulder at the mansion, smiling with victory, never realizing that the woman she mocked had just found a new protector, and that fate was already weaving her path towards strength. Soon a sealed letter will arrive that changes everything. The shrill cry of a nightmare tore through Harriet's little house in the middle of the night. Emily jolted upright, drenched in sweat, clutching her broken locket so tightly that the jagged edge cut her palm. "No! Don't throw me out! Please, Daniel, don't shut the door!" she screamed, her voice raw with panic. Harriet rushed in, wrapping a blanket around her trembling shoulders. "It's all right, child. You're safe now. No one will hurt you here." Emily buried her face into Harriet's chest, sobbing until her body shook. She could not remember her past, yet the echo of humiliation at the mansion gates haunted her dreams. Her heart clung to the devotion she once gave her husband, even as her mind told her it was gone. By morning, she sat quietly at the small wooden table, trying to pour tea into a cup. Her hands trembled, spilling more than she saved. She whispered, "I'm useless." Maybe he was right. Harriet, steady and patient, took her hand. "Don't ever say that. You're broken, yes, but broken things can be mended. You just need time." Later that day, a familiar face appeared at the door. Dr. Samuel Hayes, the neurologist who had once warned Daniel about patience, stepped inside carrying medical notes. His expression softened when he saw Emily wrapped in Harriet's shawl. "Emily," he said gently, "I know you may not remember me. I'm Dr. Hayes. I treated you after the accident." Emily tilted her head, her eyes wide and searching. "Doctor? Did you know my husband?" "Yes," he replied carefully. "I told him you needed care." He didn't listen. His voice tightened with restrained anger, but then softened. "Still, your recovery is possible. With love, patience, and safety, your memory may return one day." Emily touched her locket, her tears brimming. "But if he wouldn't wait for me, should I even hope?" Before Dr. Hayes could answer, another voice broke in. "Yes, you should." It was Anna Blake, a young law intern assisting Clara Reed, the family lawyer. Barely in her 20s, with bright eyes and nervous determination, she carried an armful of files. "I came with Dr. Hayes," she explained shyly. "Clara sent me to check on you. She said you're important." Emily blinked, surprised. "Important? Me?" Anna nodded, setting the files aside. You may not feel it now, but your story isn't over. People like Daniel want you silenced, but Clara believes there's something about you that must be protected. Harriet smiled faintly. See, child? Even strangers can see your worth. For the first time since her accident, Emily let out a small, fragile laugh. It was weak, but it carried hope. She whispered, maybe I'm not nothing after all. Yet as evening fell, Anna whispered something to Dr. Hayes by the door, her face pale. Clara said we must prepare her. There's a sealed letter, and when she reads it, everything will change. Emily, unaware of the storm that letter would bring, sat quietly at the table, piecing together a cracked photograph she had found inside her suitcase. She traced her own faint smile in the picture, wondering if one day she would recognize herself again. But fate was moving closer, hidden in ink and paper. And soon a letter would arrive that would shatter the chains of shame and unlock a fortune no one imagined. The pounding at the door came like thunder. Emily jumped, her teacup crashing to the floor. Harriet rushed forward, pulling Emily behind her protectively. Who is it? Harriet demanded. A calm, firm voice answered, Clara Reed, I'm here on legal matters concerning Emily Carter. Harriet opened the door slowly. A tall woman in a tailored navy suit stepped inside, carrying a leather briefcase. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, then softened as they landed on Emily. You don't know me, Clara said gently, but I know you. My name is Clara Reed, your late uncle Martin Gray's lawyer. Emily's brows furrowed. Uncle Martin? I don't remember him. Clara placed her briefcase on the table and opened it. Inside was a thick, sealed envelope stamped with wax. Your uncle passed away years ago. He was estranged from the family, quiet and very private. But before his death, he entrusted me with this letter. He made me swear it would only be given to you, Emily, at the moment life forced you to stand alone. Emily's hands trembled. Why now? Clara's eyes grew serious. Because your husband threw you out. Because you were humiliated. Because the man who was supposed to protect you abandoned you. Your uncle feared this would happen. He prepared for it. Emily stared at the envelope as if it burned. Her fingers hovered over the seal. What if I don't want to know? Anna, standing close, whispered softly. Sometimes truth hurts less than lies. Open it. With shaking hands, Emily broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. The ink faded but strong. Harriet touched her shoulder as Emily began to read aloud. My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, it means the family has failed you. Forgive me for leaving you alone for so long, but I have always watched from afar. You are my heir and I have left you $500 million in trust. It is yours to control, but it must remain secret until you are ready. Do not let greed destroy you. And do not let anyone, and especially Daniel, near this fortune. This wealth is not just money. It is your shield, your weapon, and your second life. Use it with wisdom. Rise, Emily. Rise and show them you are more than they ever believed. The room fell silent. Emily's chest heaved as tears streamed down her face. 500 million? Her voice cracked between disbelief and fear. I don't deserve this. I'm broken. I'm nothing. Clara leaned forward, her eyes steady. No, Emily. That is what they wanted you to believe. But this letter proves you were chosen. You are not broken. You are the heir of strength. Harriet gripped her hand firmly. Child, you've been given a second chance. Take it. Anna smiled softly. This is your new beginning. Emily clutched the letter to her chest, whispering, I will not waste this chance. I will rise. But Clara's gaze darkened slightly. Be careful. Daniel must never find out. If he does, he will come for you, and he will destroy you. The words hung heavy in the room, and outside, in the distance, Daniel's empire was already beginning to tremble, though he didn't yet know why. The crack of Clara Reed's briefcase snapping open filled the small room with sudden tension. The sharp sound startled Emily, who flinched as if struck. Clara, a tall woman in her late 30s with sharp features and steady eyes, leaned across the table. She was not just any lawyer. She was the executor of Martin Gray's will, a woman known in the courts for her precision and refusal to bend to corruption. Listen carefully, she said firmly. From this moment, your inheritance is sealed. I have secured every document in your name, beyond Daniel's reach. No one, not your husband, not your father-in-law, can touch a single cent. Emily's lips parted in shock. Secured? In my name? Yes, Clara said. It is your right, and I am here to defend it with my life, if necessary. Beside her stood Anna Blake, a new face Emily hadn't seen before. Anna was barely 22, a law intern working under Clara. With her round glasses, nervous hands, and a heart that carried more compassion than experience, she stepped forward shyly. I'm Anna, she said softly, her voice trembling. I may be new, but Clara asked me to stand by you as a witness. She said you'd need not just a lawyer, but a friend. Emily blinked back tears, staring at the young woman's earnest face. A friend? Anna nodded quickly. Yes, I'll help however I can. I'll remind you of the truth when others call you worthless. You won't be alone anymore. Harriet Cole, the caregiver who had sheltered Emily, folded her arms with quiet approval. Good. She needs more than pity. She needs fighters around her. Clara slid thick legal folders across the table. These are the trust agreements. They lock away your inheritance of $500 million. Your uncle designed it so Daniel cannot touch it, not even if he suspects. Emily reached out with trembling hands, brushing over the papers as though they might vanish. Her tears fell freely. 500 million. Uncle Martin. He must have loved me more than I ever knew. Clara's voice softened, though her tone remained firm. He saw your worth when others didn't. He knew you might face betrayal one day, and he wanted you prepared. Emily pressed her broken locket to her chest. Daniel called me nothing, but this says I was always something. Harriet leaned close, her hand warm on Emily's. Child, don't let their cruelty decide your value. This is your second chance. Anna's eyes shone with quiet admiration. Emily, you may not feel it yet, but one day people will look at you as hope itself. For the first time since her accident, Emily managed a fragile smile. Then I will guard this chance, with everything I have. Clara straightened, her expression tightening again. Good, but remember, this must stay secret. If Daniel or Vanessa ever hear of this fortune, they will come for you, and Daniel will not stop until he destroys you. The air in the room grew heavy. Emily clutched the letter to her chest, her whisper steady now. Then let it remain hidden. He will never know. But miles away in the Carter mansion, Daniel raised his glass with Vanessa at his side, boasting loudly about the empire he thought was untouchable. He had no idea that his downfall was already sealed in silence. Emily's scream shattered the quiet morning. I can't do it, she cried, collapsing onto the floor. A simple attempt to carry a tray of breakfast had ended with broken cups scattered across Harriet's kitchen tiles. Her hands bled from a shard of glass. Harriet rushed in, lifting her gently. Child, stop blaming yourself, she said firmly. It's only glass. You are more than your mistakes. But Emily's tears flowed freely. Daniel was right. I'm useless. Look at me. I can't even hold a tray. Her voice trembled with humiliation, the echo of her husband's words still chaining her heart. Anna Blake knelt beside her. Though young, the law intern carried an unusual fire of empathy. She wrapped a bandage around Emily's hand with careful gentleness. You are not useless, Anna whispered. I've seen useless people. They don't even try. But you keep standing, even when it hurts. That is strength. Emily's eyes flickered with doubt, but also with the faintest glimmer of belief. Later that afternoon, Dr. Samuel Hayes arrived for his routine visit. His calm presence filled the small house. Emily, he said softly, examining her carefully, your progress is slow, but it is progress. Memory may take time, but healing is already beginning. Don't measure yourself against yesterday. Measure yourself against who you were the day of the accident. You are already stronger. Emily looked down at her bandaged hand, remembering how broken she had felt at the hospital. Her lips trembled. Do you really think I can be whole again? Dr. Hayes gave her a steady nod. I don't think. I know. That night, Emily sat by the window of Harriet's house. She watched the sky darken, pressing her broken locket against her chest. For the first time, instead of praying for Daniel to take her back, she prayed for courage. Let me rise. Let me not be nothing. Harriet joined her quietly, carrying 2 cups of warm tea. The world tried to break you, Emily, but sometimes broken pieces shine brighter when put back together. The words settled deep in Emily's heart. She breathed slowly, whispering, "One day I will rise." Anna, sitting on the floor with legal notes spread around her, looked up with a smile. "When that day comes, I'll be there to cheer the loudest." Emily managed a faint laugh, fragile, but genuine. For the first time since her accident, her eyes carried something new, the seed of determination. But outside, shadows gathered. At the Carter mansion, Daniel stood with Vanessa at a grand dinner, raising a toast. "To a new beginning," he boasted, loud enough for the guests to hear. "Emily is gone, and I finally have the life I deserve." Victor Stone, his cunning business rival, sat at the same table, hiding a smirk as he studied Daniel closely. Daniel had no idea that his empire was already being watched, and soon, betrayal would strike not from his wife, but from the very people he trusted most. Crystal glasses clinked as Daniel Carter slammed his wine onto the long dining table. The hall erupted in forced laughter, guests echoing his pride. At his side, Vanessa Moore leaned close, her lips brushing his ear as she whispered, "Let them see us. Tonight, we win." Daniel rose to his feet, raising his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make this clear," he boomed. "Emily is no longer my wife. She was weak, broken, a dead weight. But now I stand with Vanessa, a woman of strength. Together, we will build the Carter legacy greater than ever before." Gasps filled the room. Some guests clapped politely, others exchanged uneasy looks. Among them sat Robert Carter, Daniel's father, beaming with pride. He pounded the table with his fist. "Well said, my son. You've done what needed to be done. The Carter name cannot carry a burden." At the far end of the table, a man leaned back, watching quietly. His name was Victor Stone, a sharp-eyed businessman known for his cunning deals and ruthless strategies. A rival of Daniel's empire, Victor wore a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He raised his glass lazily and said, "To Daniel Carter, a man who knows how to cut away weakness." Daniel mistook the sarcasm for praise. "Exactly," he declared. "Emily could never give me children, never give me the future I deserved. Vanessa will. She will give me everything Emily stole." Vanessa's hand slid across Daniel's arm, her smile sweet, though her eyes gleamed with ambition. She had what she wanted: the mansion, the attention, the name. But behind closed doors, when the guests turned away, her tone shifted. "Daniel, remember this. Without me, you're nothing. Don't ever forget who stands beside you now." Daniel laughed arrogantly, kissing her cheek. "Without me, you'd still be waiting in the shadows. I made you shine, Vanessa." For a moment, silence pressed between them. But both swallowed their pride, too greedy to risk the other walking away. Meanwhile, in his corner, Victor Stone's mind was already racing. He leaned toward a colleague and whispered, "Daniel thinks he's untouchable, but pride always blinds a man. When the cracks show, I'll be the one to break him." Robert, oblivious to the danger, raised another toast. "To Vanessa, the true Carter wife." The hall rang with forced applause, but outside those walls the community whispered different words. How could Daniel parade another woman so soon? How cruel, how arrogant. Back in her quiet shelter, Emily pressed her broken locket to her chest, though she could not see what Daniel was doing. Her heart trembled as if warning her. She whispered softly, "Something is coming. I can feel it." And she was right, for Vanessa's greed and Victor's cunning would soon weave together, and the empire Daniel boasted of tonight would be the very thing stripped from his hands tomorrow. Vanessa's laughter rang out in the grand sitting room, sharp and mocking. "Daniel," she said, draping herself across the velvet couch, "you think this mansion is enough for me? You think being your new wife is all I want?" "No, I want more. Much more." Daniel, sipping his drink, frowned. "More? Haven't I given you everything? The house, the cars, the title?" "Titles fade when empires fall," she cut in coldly. "And I don't intend to fall with you. The room stiffened with silence. Robert Carter, Daniel's father, sat nearby, sipping brandy. His voice was hard. Careful, Vanessa. The Carter name is iron. It cannot be broken. But Victor Stone, the rival businessman, leaned forward from his chair in the corner. He had been invited under the guise of partnership talks, but his eyes gleamed with mischief. Oh, Robert, Victor said smoothly. Every empire has a weak point. Even iron rusts, and I know exactly where Daniel's weaknesses are. Daniel straightened in anger. Watch your tongue, Victor. Vanessa, however, smiled sweetly at Victor. Tell me, she purred. What do you see? Victor smirked. A proud man building castles on sand. A man who trusts too easily. A man who doesn't realize his so-called allies are watching for the perfect time to strike. Before Daniel could speak again, another figure entered. Felicia Grant, Vanessa's closest friend, a woman with fiery red lipstick and an even sharper tongue. She threw herself onto the couch beside Vanessa, laughing. Vanessa, why waste yourself on one man? Daniel's pockets are deep, yes, but why settle when there are deeper ones waiting? She glanced at Victor knowingly. Deeper and sharper. Vanessa's smile widened. Exactly. Robert slammed his glass down. Enough! You speak like traitors under my roof. But Daniel only laughed arrogantly, mistaking their hints for idle talk. Let them talk, father. They'll see soon enough that I cannot be broken. Later that night, Vanessa met Victor privately on the balcony. The city lights glittered below, but greed glittered brighter in her eyes. You can strip him of his contracts? She asked. Victor nodded. One by one. With your help inside, I'll dismantle his empire until he has nothing left. And when he's desperate, he'll crawl at your feet. Then you decide if you still want him. Felicia joined them, her voice sly. And if you tire of him, Vanessa, there's Anthony Rivers, a richer man. A man who could make you a queen. Vanessa's heart raced at the thought. Then let it begin, she whispered. Behind the closed doors, Robert Carter muttered to Beatrice, the family elder who often agreed with him. Daniel may think he controls her, but Vanessa is fire. Fire consumes. And down the hallway, Daniel poured himself another drink, blind to the storm gathering at his back. The empire he flaunted so loudly was about to be torn apart, and the first betrayal would come from the woman he thought was his victory. The knock at Harriet's door came like a storm. Hard, sharp, insistent. Harriet froze mid-step, her eyes narrowing. No one visits at this hour, she muttered. Emily, seated at the table with Anna, stiffened. Her hands clutched the broken locket. Fear clouded her face. Who is it? Before Harriet could answer, the door burst open. Daniel Carter stepped inside without waiting, his expensive cologne filling the modest room. His eyes darted around, and for the first time in weeks they landed on Emily. Emily, he said, his voice dripping with false softness. You look better. Emily's heart pounded. Part of her still longed for him, the man she once loved, the man her heart remembered even if her mind did not. But another part of her trembled with anger, recalling the gates where he had thrown her out like trash. Why are you here? She whispered. Daniel stepped closer, his smile practiced. I couldn't sleep. I thought of you. I needed to see how you were doing. Harriet quickly stepped between them, her eyes blazing. Liar! You didn't care when she was bleeding in the streets. Don't pretend you care now. Daniel's mask cracked for a second, but he smoothed it over. I admit I was angry, but people make mistakes. Emily, you belong with me. Come back home. Let's forget the past. Anna stood, her fists clenched. Forget the past? You humiliated her in front of the whole community. You called her nothing. And now you come crawling here? Daniel's jaw tightened. Stay out of this, little girl. This is between a husband and his wife. Emily rose slowly to her feet, her body still weak, but her voice carried a steadiness that surprised even her. No, Daniel, this is not between a husband and wife. That ended the day you shut the gates on me. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Fine. Then tell me the truth. How are you paying for this place? How are you surviving? Who's helping you? His question sliced through the air. Harriet's face hardened. Anna's stomach dropped. Daniel's mask of pity had slipped, and his true motive was clear. He wasn't there for Emily's well-being. He was hunting for her resources. Emily's tears welled, but she didn't look away. "It doesn't matter who helps me. What matters is that it's not you," Daniel sneered. "So you do have help. I knew it. Someone's giving you money, aren't they?" His voice grew sharp, desperate. "Tell me who it is." Emily took a step back, clutching her broken locket, her chin trembling but lifted. "I will tell you nothing. Not today. Not ever." Daniel's face darkened, anger flashing in his eyes. For a moment, it seemed he might explode. But Harriet's firm voice cut in, steady as iron. "Get out of my house before I drag you out myself." Daniel glared at them all, his fists tightening. "This isn't over, Emily. I will find out. And when I do—" His voice trailed off, leaving the threat heavy in the air. He slammed the door behind him, the walls shaking with the force. Emily sank back into her chair, tears falling. But this time, they were not only tears of weakness. They carried defiance. Anna knelt beside her, whispering, "He suspects. We need to be careful. Very careful." And she was right, because Daniel's next move would draw the eyes of people far more dangerous than himself. The shredder whirred furiously in Daniel Carter's office as papers vanished one by one. His hands moved quickly, sweat glistening on his forehead. "Burn it all," he barked at his secretary. "If anyone asks, these contracts never existed." What Daniel didn't know was that across town, another man was already digging into his empire. Marcus Hale, a seasoned forensic accountant with sharp eyes and a reputation for exposing corporate lies, sat in a quiet office lined with files. Known in legal circles as the Bloodhound, Marcus could sniff out corruption where others saw nothing. Beside him sat Mia Foster, his eager 24-year-old assistant, scribbling notes as fast as her hands allowed. "Look at this," Marcus said, slamming a document on the table. Daniel Carter's company claimed a profit margin of 40% last quarter, but the invoices show payments disappearing into shell accounts overseas. Someone's hiding money. Mia leaned forward, her eyes wide. "That's not just sloppy bookkeeping. That's fraud. Do you think he's stealing from his own investors?" Marcus nodded grimly. "It's bigger than that. He's bleeding his empire to cover debts. Debts no one else even knows about." He pulled out another folder, one delivered discreetly by Clara Reed. Clara, Emily's lawyer, had quietly handed Marcus sealed evidence weeks ago. "Clara was right," Marcus muttered. "This man's empire is a castle built on sand." Mia's pen paused. "But why would Clara care about Daniel Carter?" Marcus looked at her over his glasses. "Because the woman Daniel threw away, Emily Carter, matters more than he realizes. Clara said Emily's future depends on this truth being exposed." For a moment, silence filled the room. Mia whispered, almost to herself, "So she's the one he abandoned. And now, he's the one who might lose everything." Meanwhile, back at the Carter mansion, Daniel poured himself a drink, blissfully unaware of the storm forming. Vanessa lounged nearby, her laughter filling the room. "You worry too much," she teased. "No one can touch you." Daniel smirked arrogantly. "You're right. I've covered every track. No accountant in the world can break me." But in Marcus's office, pages of financial records piled high, every number a nail in Daniel's coffin. Mia pointed to one transfer with wide eyes. "Marcus, look at this. A $10 million wire to an account under Vanessa Moore's name." Marcus froze, his jaw tightening. He's not just cooking the books. He's funneling money to his mistress. "This isn't carelessness. This is corruption," Mia whispered. "If this comes out, it will destroy him." Marcus closed the file, his voice low but steady. "Then that's exactly what we'll do. Piece by piece, we will expose him until there's nothing left for him to hide." The lamp flickered, casting shadows across the office. Marcus's eyes hardened, already seeing the inevitable. And soon his findings would not just shake Daniel's empire. They would bring the law itself crashing down on him. The gavel slammed down in court with thunderous force. "All assets of Daniel Carter are hereby frozen," Judge Linda Howard declared, her voice sharp and unyielding, "pending full investigation of fraud and misappropriation." Daniel shot to his feet, his face pale. "This is outrageous," he shouted. "I am the Carter name. No judge can strip me of my legacy. From the gallery, Detective Brian Scott, the officer assigned to Daniel's corruption case, rose calmly. His badge glinted under the fluorescent lights. Your legacy ends today, Carter. The evidence is clear. Across the courtroom, Victor Stone, Daniel's cunning business rival, leaned back in satisfaction. His smirk widened as he whispered to an associate, "The empire is mine now. Pride always makes a man blind." Vanessa sat near the front, crossing her legs elegantly, but her eyes darted nervously. She had no intention of falling with Daniel. Later that evening, at a gala glittering with lights, Vanessa slipped her arm around Anthony Rivers, a wealthier investor whose charm and deep pockets had long tempted her. She laughed, her eyes never once turning back to Daniel, who stood alone in the crowd, whispers surrounding him. "Vanessa," Anthony said smoothly, "a woman like you deserves better than a sinking ship. Stay with me, and you'll never know lack again." Vanessa's heart raced. Without hesitation, she kissed his cheek and left Daniel standing humiliated in the center of the room. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. "Vanessa," his voice cracked with disbelief. "You can't leave me. Not now. Not when I've given you everything." But Vanessa didn't look back. She walked away, hand in hand with Anthony, her smile bright with victory. At the edge of the gala, Felicia Grant, Vanessa's so-called friend, whispered cruelly, "See? Loyalty doesn't pay when money speaks louder." And when Anthony later discarded Vanessa for another woman, her fall was just as swift as her betrayal. Alone and mocked, she was cornered at a table by Gloria Daniels, a rival socialite with a venomous grin. Gloria's voice dripped with scorn. "So, this is the mighty Vanessa? You traded love for greed and still ended up with nothing. Look at you now, forgotten, unwanted." Vanessa's face burned as she realized her kingdom of lies had collapsed. Meanwhile, Daniel staggered out of the gala into the cold night. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions. "Mr. Carter, is it true your mistress deserted you? Are you bankrupt? Did you steal from your own investors?" Flashes from cameras blinded him as he pushed through the crowd, his voice breaking. "Leave me alone. I'm still Daniel Carter. I'm still—" But the words died in his throat. His empire was gone. His father Robert's name was disgraced. His mistress had betrayed him. For the first time, Daniel stood truly alone. And as he collapsed to his knees on the steps outside the gala, one thought seared through his mind. The wife he had called nothing now held everything, and soon he would be forced to face her again. The mansion gates that once threw her out now shook with desperate pounding. "Emily, Emily, please, open the door." Daniel's voice cracked like broken glass, carrying into the night. His once polished suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Inside Harriet's small home, Emily sat calmly, holding her restored locket. Clara had helped repair it, symbol of her healing. Harriet peeked through the curtain. "It's him," she whispered. "The man who abandoned you is on his knees." Anna clenched her fists, anger burning in her young eyes. "He has no right to be here. After everything, he dares to beg?" Clara placed a hand on Anna's shoulder. The lawyer's voice was firm but steady. "Patience. Emily must decide this moment for herself." The pounding grew louder. "Emily, I was wrong. I was blind. Vanessa betrayed me. My empire is gone. My father disgraced. Please forgive me. Take me back. We can start over." Emily rose slowly, her heart pounding, but her steps steady. She opened the door. The sight of Daniel on the ground nearly broke her. Once a man of arrogance, now reduced to a beggar in the streetlight. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Daniel crawled forward, clutching her dress. "You're still my wife. You always will be. Please, save me." Emily's tears glistened, but her voice carried dignity, not weakness. "The day you called me nothing, Daniel, was the day you stopped being my husband. You threw me out when I needed love the most. You chose humiliation over devotion, and now you reap what you sowed." Daniel's face twisted in despair. "I was foolish. I let greed blind me. Give me another chance." Behind Emily, Marcus Hale, the forensic accountant, stepped into the doorway. His calm voice cut like steel. Daniel Carter, you don't need a wife's forgiveness. You need a judge's mercy, and that you won't find. The community gathered outside, whispers rippling like fire. Is that Daniel Carter? Begging? To the wife he abandoned? The same neighbors who once mocked Emily now watched in awe. Harriet's voice rang out from behind Emily. Stand tall, child. This is your moment. Emily lifted her chin, her tears drying. She looked at Daniel with grace, not hatred. I forgive you, Daniel, but I will never return to you. My life is not yours to claim anymore. Daniel's grip loosened, his body trembling as he collapsed fully onto the ground. The crowd gasped at the finality of her words. Emily turned, stepping back into her home. The locket around her neck caught the light, no longer broken, but whole again. Just like her. The community erupted in cheers, not for Daniel, but for Emily. The woman once discarded, now risen in strength and dignity. But as she closed the door gently, Clara's voice carried a quiet warning. This chapter may be over, Emily, but the world is still watching. What you choose to do with your inheritance will decide the legacy you leave. And thus the final decision of Emily's new life still lingered in the air. The wail of sirens shattered the night. Red and blue lights painted the street outside Harriet's home as police cars screeched to a halt. Doors slammed. Officers swarmed. At their head stood Detective Brian Scott, tall, calm, and unflinching. His voice carried authority as he read aloud, Daniel Carter, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and corporate misconduct. You have the right to remain silent. Daniel's body crumpled further into the dirt, his hands shaking as cuffs snapped around his wrists. No, you can't do this. I'm Daniel Carter. I built everything. I am the Carter name. The crowd jeered. Neighbors who once cheered his arrogance now shouted curses. You're nothing without her, one cried. Shame on you, another spat. Judge Linda Howard herself had arrived, summoned for the case's urgency. Standing in her black robe, she declared firmly, Justice has no favorites. You ruined lives for greed. Tonight, the law has found you. Marcus Hale, standing beside Clara Reed, handed over the final evidence files. Every number, every transfer, the truth is here, he said calmly. Mia, his assistant, nodded eagerly at his side, her eyes bright with pride. Through it all, Emily stood silently on the porch. Her broken locket, now repaired, glistened against her chest. The same community that once whispered useless, now whispered a different word. Strong. Harriet touched her shoulder gently. Child, you don't need to say anything. Your life already speaks. Emily's gaze fell on Daniel, now shoved into the back of the police car. His once proud face was pale, desperate, begging even as the door closed. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Emily did not smile, nor cry. She simply whispered, Goodbye, Daniel. I release you. Tears rolled down Daniel's cheeks as the car drove away, swallowed by the night. The crowd turned to Emily, clapping, cheering, some even crying. For them, this wasn't just justice. It was redemption. Anna Blake, unable to hold back, rushed to hug Emily. You did it. You stood tall. You've shown every betrayed woman that dignity is greater than revenge. Clara stepped forward, her sharp expression softening. Your inheritance is secure, your name is clean, and your story is stronger than ever. Now the choice is yours. How will you use this gift? Emily raised her repaired locket to the sky. Her voice was steady, carrying across the street. I will not waste it. I will build a foundation for women like me, the abandoned, the broken, the silenced. No woman will stand alone the way I once did. The community erupted in applause, tears glistening in their eyes. As the night settled, Emily stepped back into Harriet's home, her heart lighter. She had been a wife humiliated, a woman forgotten, but now she stood as something far greater, a voice for others. Her story had begun with betrayal, but it ended with strength. And as the locket caught the last light of the night, one truth echoed in every heart. Sometimes the woman you call nothing becomes the power you can never silence. Husband divorced his poor wife after her business failed, unaware of her $100 million fortune. He didn't just leave her. He destroyed her in front of the world. On the same day her boutique turned to ashes, he threw divorce papers in her trembling hands and walked away with her own employee. Failure is all you'll ever be, Emma. You're nothing to me now. Sign this and disappear. Those were the cruel words Mark spat as her tears fell onto the paper. Instead of holding her through the storm, he handed her to humiliation. Instead of loyalty, he chose betrayal. He thought she would remain broken, forgotten, buried under whispers of shame. But what he never knew was that the woman he cast aside carried a secret, a fortune waiting to rise with her, a gift that would not only rebuild her life, but also strip away the pride he wore like a crown. Sometimes the ones you discard become the ones you cannot escape. Sometimes the woman you mock as worthless becomes the very name the world applauds. This is not just another tale of betrayal. It is the cry of a heart abandoned, the journey of a soul crushed and rebuilt, and the reminder that dignity shines brightest after the darkest nights. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it is like letting her voice fade again into silence. But when you click that button, you stand with every woman betrayed, every dream torn apart, and every survivor who chose to rise. Please subscribe now, and in the comments, share where you're watching from. Let Emma know she is not alone. The boutique door slammed open, and Emma stumbled inside carrying 3 heavy bags of fabrics, her hands trembling from exhaustion. It was past midnight, the street outside empty, but her light still burned. Dust clung to her cheeks, and her once elegant dress was marked with stains from hours of work. She had spent the entire day meeting suppliers, negotiating prices, and delivering finished clothes to customers herself. Yet when she entered her small apartment upstairs, Mark, her husband, was sprawled lazily on the couch, television flickering before his face, a glass of wine in his hand. He didn't even look up. Finally, he muttered, eyes fixed on the screen. Took you long enough. Did you bring the money? His voice was sharp, not with concern but with entitlement. Emma's heart sank. She wanted to tell him how she had skipped meals to save on costs, how she had walked miles because she couldn't afford transport, how her feet burned from standing in the market all day. But she swallowed the words. Instead, she placed a crumpled envelope of cash on the table. Mark snatched it without gratitude, flipping through the notes. Not enough. How do you expect us to live like this? Look at me, Emma. I should be a man with status, not living off scraps from your little shop. Emma blinked back tears, but her voice remained steady. I'm trying, Mark. The boutique is growing. I just need more time. Every cent goes back into keeping it alive. From the corner, Anna, their young employee, barely 22, with quiet eyes that seemed too observant, stood arranging new fabric on the shelf. She watched silently, lips pressed tight, as Emma's devotion was met with scorn. The neighbors outside whispered whenever they passed. That Emma works herself to death while her husband enjoys himself, they would say. Some admired her determination, but most mocked the imbalance. She doesn't know she's married to her own burden. Emma ignored their voices. She believed love required sacrifice. She believed her efforts would one day turn their lives around. Her boutique was not just a business, it was her dream. Her way of proving she could build something lasting. But as she watched Mark pour himself another drink with money she had earned, doubt crept into her heart like a shadow. Anna broke the silence, her voice calm but edged with something Emma didn't notice. Don't worry, ma'am. Hard work never fails. One day you'll be rewarded. Emma gave her a tired smile, grateful for the encouragement, never realizing Anna's eyes lingered too long on Mark. That night, Emma collapsed into bed, whispering a prayer for strength. She had no idea the storm was closer than she thought, and that her sacrifices would soon be tested in ways she could never imagine. She believed her boutique was unshakable, but before dawn, fate would prove her wrong. The night sky glowed red. Emma shot up from her bed as neighbors screamed in the street. When she threw open the window, her heart froze. Her boutique was on fire. Flames licked through the wooden beams, swallowing the signboard she had painted with her own hands. Sparks hissed into the air, and the smell of smoke choked her lungs. Emma! Emma! A neighbor shouted, banging on her door. Your shop! Hurry! Barefoot, she ran down the stairs, the ground scorching beneath her steps. A small crowd had already gathered, some pointing in shock, others whispering. Water buckets were passed, but the fire was too strong, too fast. In seconds, her shelves, fabrics, and hard work of years crumbled into ash. Emma dropped to her knees, tears streaming. She reached out as if her hands could hold the collapsing beams, but they fell with a roar, forcing her back. Behind her, Mark appeared, not to comfort her, but to sigh with annoyance. Unbelievable. All my plans ruined because of your carelessness, he hissed, clutching his robe as if the smoke dirtied him. Emma looked at him, trembling. Our boutique. It's gone, Mark. Everything is gone. Instead of holding her, he spat on the ground. Not ours, Emma, yours. I never asked you to waste your life in that little shop. Now look, nothing but debt and shame. His words cut sharper than the flames. Moments later, a stern voice broke through the chaos. Mr. Cole, the local bank manager, marched toward them, his tall frame commanding silence. He had loaned Emma money to expand the boutique months ago. His face was tight with anger. Emma, he said firmly, ignoring the fire, this is a disaster. Do you realize how much you still owe us? Your collateral won't cover it. You need to find a way to pay immediately. Emma stammered, please, Mr. Cole, give me time. I'll rebuild, I promise. But Mr. Cole's eyes narrowed. Hope does not pay debts. Banks need results, not promises. You have 1 week before legal action begins. The crowd murmured. Mrs. Harris, Emma's mother-in-law, stepped forward, her lips curled with disgust. Didn't I warn you, Mark? She said loud enough for all to hear. This woman brings nothing but disgrace. She drags you down, and you stand here like a fool defending her? Shame on you both. Mark's jaw tightened, but instead of defending Emma, he turned away. His silence spoke louder than words. He was already slipping from her side. Emma wrapped her arms around herself as the fire hissed lower, leaving only blackened ruins. Her boutique, her sweat, her sacrifices, gone in one cruel night. But worse than the fire was the shift she felt in the people around her. Their eyes no longer saw her as a fighter. They saw her as a failure. And in the corner, Anna stood with folded arms, her gaze calm, almost too calm. Emma thought the fire had destroyed enough, but the real flames, the ones inside her marriage, were only just beginning to burn. The slap echoed through the small apartment like a gunshot. Mark's palm had struck Emma across the cheek, leaving her stunned and trembling. She clutched her face, staring at the man she once called her partner. All this time, he spat, pacing the room, I carried your shame. People laugh at me in the streets, Emma. They whisper that I live off a failed woman. Do you think I'll let you drag me down forever? Emma's lips quivered. I lost everything in the fire, Mark. I'm trying to hold us together. Can't you see that? But his eyes were full of contempt. Trying? You're nothing but a weight on my shoulders. I need a wife who lifts me, not one who buries me in ashes. The words pierced deeper than the blow. Emma turned away, tears falling silently. She had given him her best years, her strength, her dreams. Now in her weakest moment, he treated her as nothing. At that moment, Aunt Marion, Emma's bitter aunt, arrived, her voice shrill as she entered. She had never liked Emma and often favored Mark. I told you, Emma, she said coldly, hands on her hips. This marriage was bound to fail. A man like Mark deserves better than a woman who can't even keep a business alive. You should be ashamed. Emma's heart twisted. To be blamed by her own family was a wound she could hardly bear. Meanwhile, outside the apartment, neighbors gossiped loudly. Their whispers carried through the thin walls. Poor Emma, she tried too hard. But look at her now. Nothing left. And her husband, already slipping away. Some pitied her, but most mocked. The same mouths that once praised her determination now laughed at her failure. Even her old customers, once loyal, drifted elsewhere. Her quality was good, they muttered, but who trusts a woman who can't manage her own life? The betrayal stung, not in coins, but in trust lost. In the shadows, Anna moved quietly around the boutique's ashes, offering Emma soft words of encouragement, but her eyes often strayed toward Mark. She carried baskets of salvaged cloth as if helping, but her smile toward Emma's husband lingered longer than it should. Emma clung to hope, whispering to herself at night, This storm will pass. He'll see I'm still the same woman he loved. But even as she prayed, she felt the distance growing. The warmth of love was turning into the cold silence of resentment. One evening when she brought Mark his dinner, he shoved the plate away. I don't want your pity food. Maybe I need a woman who knows how to succeed, not one who drags me into shame. His eyes flicked toward Anna, who stood quietly in the doorway, and Emma's heart sank with a new fear she dared not name. Emma thought she was fighting only the fire's aftermath, but another fire, one burning in secrecy, was already consuming her home. The kiss was sudden, stolen in the shadows of the ruined boutique. Mark's lips brushed against Anna's, his hand gripping her wrist. Emma's trusted employee gasped, but instead of pulling away, she smiled faintly. If Emma finds out, Anna whispered. Mark smirked, lowering his voice. She won't. She's too blind with failure to notice anything. Besides, you're the only one who understands me now. That night, Emma walked into the shop's burnt shell to find Anna dusting charred shelves. The young woman greeted her warmly, as if nothing had happened. Don't lose hope, ma'am. You're stronger than this. I'll stay by your side no matter what. Her words dripped with loyalty, and Emma, weary and broken, believed them. But Anna's friend Lydia, bold and greedy, whispered poison into Anna's ear whenever they met in the market. Why waste time helping Emma? Lydia sneered. Mark is a man with ambition. Stay close to him, and you'll live a life of comfort. Forget loyalty. Loyalty doesn't buy silk dresses or fine wine. Anna hesitated, torn between appearances of kindness and the lure of greed. Her eyes sparkled when she imagined the life Lydia promised. Meanwhile, Mark's old friend Lucas slapped him on the back in a local bar. Lucas was the kind who thrived on ego and arrogance, a man who lived for shallow victories. Why chain yourself to a sinking ship? He laughed, sipping his drink. You've got youth on your side, money to make, women to chase. That wife of yours, she's dead weight. A man like you deserves better. Mark nodded, drinking in the flattery. Lucas's words ignited something dangerous inside him. The belief that leaving Emma wasn't betrayal, but freedom. Back at home, Emma worked late into the night, sketching plans for a new boutique with trembling hands. She didn't see how Mark lingered longer by Anna's side. She didn't hear the whispers exchanged behind her back. She still believed her sacrifices bound them together. Mark, she said softly one evening, serving him dinner. Thank you for staying with me. I know things are hard, but I promise I'll rise again. I'll make you proud. He looked at her, silent for a moment, then forced a smile. Of course, Emma. I'll always stand by you. His words felt like comfort, but in his eyes there was no love, only calculation. Later that night, while Emma wept quietly in her room, Mark and Anna exchanged another secret glance. False loyalty had wrapped itself around Emma's world like a snake, and she had no idea its fangs were already aimed at her heart. Emma believed his promises, but the world would soon see those same promises ripped apart. Not in whispers, but in the glare of public betrayal. The courtroom gasped as the papers slammed onto the wooden desk. Mark had thrown them with a smirk, his voice echoing through the chamber. Sign them, Emma. Today you stop embarrassing me as my wife. Emma froze, her trembling hand hovering over the divorce documents. Her heart raced. She had not been warned, not even in whispers at home. To be summoned here, in front of strangers, only to be humiliated by the man she once trusted, was a cruelty beyond words. The judge glanced at her with pity. Neighbors packed the benches, whispering as if they had come to watch a play. She worked like a slave, and this is her reward? One murmured. Another replied, maybe she deserves it. A woman who can't keep her husband happy loses her place. And then, like salt on a fresh wound, Anna walked in. Her steps were deliberate, her smile unapologetic. She slid into the seat beside Mark, her hand resting boldly on his arm. Gasps rippled across the room. Emma's eyes widened in disbelief. Anna, you? Her voice cracked. Anna tilted her chin proudly. Don't look so shocked, ma'am. Some of us know how to hold on to a man. Her words dripped with venom disguised as sweetness. Mark leaned back in his chair, enjoying the spectacle. She's not just my new partner in life, Emma. She'll help me rebuild everything you ruined. This is the woman I should have chosen from the start. Emma's chest tightened. Every sacrifice, every late night, every tear for this man had been reduced to public ashes. In the back row, Mrs. Harris, her mother-in-law, shook her head with approval. "Finally, my son sees sense," she muttered, loud enough for others to hear. Emma was a curse to him from the beginning. Emma's pen slipped from her grasp. She looked around, searching for a kind face. But all she found were whispers, mockery, and silence. Her dreams, her dignity, her marriage, all torn apart in one brutal act. Still, she steadied herself. "Mark," she said softly, her voice carrying more pain than anger. "You don't know what you're doing. Betrayal doesn't bring happiness. It only destroys." But Mark laughed bitterly. "What destroys is failure, Emma. And you are failure itself." The judge cleared his throat, signaling the end of the session. But Emma's world had already ended long before his gavel struck. She gathered the shredded remains of her courage and walked out, her steps heavy, her heart bleeding. Behind her, Anna kissed Mark's cheek in front of the crowd, sealing the humiliation. The spectators erupted in whispers. The betrayal was no longer hidden. It was paraded like a crown. Emma thought the courtroom was the lowest point, but true isolation was waiting outside. A silence more painful than public shame. The door slammed shut behind her, the sound echoing like a final sentence. Emma staggered into her empty apartment, collapsing onto the floor. The silence pressed in, heavier than the courtroom whispers. Her chest heaved as sobs ripped through her body. For the first time in years, she was utterly alone. She curled into herself, hands clutching her arms as if to hold the pieces of her soul together. The betrayal in court, the mocking eyes of neighbors, Anna's smug smile, it all replayed in her mind like knives cutting deeper with every memory. Suddenly, a knock rattled the door. Hope flickered for a moment. Maybe Mark had come back. Maybe it was all a mistake. But when she opened it, Aunt Marion stood there, her expression sharp and cold. "You brought this on yourself," Marion said without hesitation. "I warned you that Mark deserved better. Now look at you. No husband, no business, nothing. You're a disgrace to this family." Emma's knees buckled, but she clung to the doorframe, whispering, "Aunt, please. Not now." Marion scoffed and turned away. "Don't expect sympathy. You're alone because you chose to fail." Emma sank to the floor, tears blurring her vision. Hours later, the door creaked open gently. James, her quiet cousin, stepped in. He was a man in his 30s with kind eyes and a soft presence that always made Emma feel safe. Without words, he knelt beside her, offering a handkerchief. "You don't deserve this," James said softly. "I've watched you give everything, Emma. Don't let his betrayal define you." Emma clutched the handkerchief, her tears soaking it. "But James, I have nothing left. How can I stand when everything has been taken?" He placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You still have yourself, and you still have people who won't leave you." Moments later, Miriam, her longtime caregiver and helper, entered with a bag of food. Her face was lined with age, but her heart was steady as stone. She set the bag down and cupped Emma's face in her rough hands. "Child," Miriam said gently, "you've carried too much on your own. Cry if you must, but tomorrow you will rise. Pain is not the end. It is a beginning in disguise." Emma's sobs slowed as the warmth of James's loyalty and Miriam's comfort surrounded her. Yet outside the window, the voices of neighbors still pierced the night. "Did you hear? Mark left her in court. She's finished. She'll never recover. Some women are just born to be forgotten." The words sliced through the fragile peace inside, reminding Emma that the world was already writing her off. She pulled the blanket over herself, her eyes red but open. Sleep would not come, only the ache of loss and the fear of tomorrow. And in the darkness, a thought whispered across her heart. What if they were right? Emma believed despair had buried her, but a letter waiting in the shadows would soon ignite a spark she thought was lost forever. The envelope hit the table with a heavy thud. Ms. Adams, a well-dressed lawyer in her 40s with sharp eyes and a calm presence, looked straight at Emma. "This arrived at my office weeks ago. It's addressed to you, from your late Uncle Richard." Emma's hands shook as she reached for it. Uncle Richard had been distant, A man she hadn't seen in years. Why now? Why her? She tore it open, the paper inside trembling with her breath. My dear Emma, the letter began, I know this may reach you in your darkest hour. I have watched from afar, silent but never uncaring. Life has tested you, and though you may feel broken, I see strength in you others do not. I leave you with more than wealth. I leave you with a chance to rise, to rebuild, and to shine again. But remember, this gift comes with a condition. Use it not for vengeance, but for good. Only then will it bear fruit. Tears blurred Emma's eyes. She clutched the letter to her chest, her heart pounding. For the first time since the fire, something other than despair stirred inside her. A spark, fragile but alive. James leaned closer, his voice gentle. Emma, this is more than money. This is hope. Miriam, standing behind her, wiped a tear with the edge of her scarf. Child, didn't I say pain is the beginning of something new? Your uncle saw what we see. You are stronger than this storm. Emma's voice cracked. But what if I fail again? What if I waste even this? Miss Adams' gaze softened. Then you rise again. This is not about failure, Emma. It's about purpose. Your uncle believed in you. I do too. Pastor John, the local faith elder who had come with Miss Adams, stepped forward quietly. His voice was low but steady, like a stream in the night. Emma, trials are not meant to destroy us. They are fires that refine us. This letter is not just about wealth. It is a reminder that you were never forgotten. You are chosen to be a light. Emma gripped the paper tighter. For the first time, she felt a flicker of courage stirring through the ashes of her pain. Yet outside, the whispers of neighbors grew louder. Did you hear? She's still clinging to hope, poor fool. Mark has moved on. She'll never recover. Emma closed her eyes, blocking out their voices. For the first time, she didn't crumble under them. For the first time, she stood. I will not waste this gift, she whispered to herself, her voice steady now. I will rise, not for revenge, but for dignity. But as she folded the letter, Miss Adams added quietly, Emma, what you read is only the beginning. The full weight of your uncle's gift will change everything. Emma's breath caught. The spark of courage flickered brighter. Though she could not yet see the fire it was about to ignite, she thought the letter was hope enough, but the true inheritance and its secrecy would turn her life in ways she could not imagine. The sound of the vault door unlocking echoed like thunder. Emma stepped into the private office of Miss Adams' law firm, her heart pounding. On the polished mahogany desk lay a stack of sealed folders and documents, thicker than any book she had ever held. Daniela, Miss Adams's young assistant, greeted her with a warm smile and guided her to the chair. Mrs. Emma, Daniela said softly, her tone full of kindness. Everything you are about to hear is confidential. No one, not your husband, not your neighbors, not even your relatives, must know until you are ready. Emma swallowed hard. She nodded, gripping the arms of the chair as though it were the only thing keeping her upright. Miss Adams adjusted her glasses, her eyes steady. Your uncle's letter was only a glimpse. Today I reveal the full truth. He left you an inheritance of $100 million. Emma gasped, her breath catching in her throat. The number felt unreal, like a dream she dared not believe. Her fingers trembled as she whispered, 100 million? Yes, Miss Adams confirmed. Investments, properties, and trust accounts. He built a fortune, and he left it entirely to you. But remember, he left it with conditions. Use it to rebuild, to bless others, and never to seek revenge. That is the path he chose for you. Emma covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. For months she had been crushed under debt, mocked by neighbors, and stripped of dignity in court. Now in one moment, her world shifted. She was no longer powerless. James, who had come to support her, leaned closer. Emma, this is your chance. You can start again. Stronger, wiser, untouchable. Daniela stepped forward with another folder. These are the papers securing your inheritance in full. I will personally ensure all transactions remain private. No one will discover your wealth until you decide. You are safe with us. Emma looked into Daniela's kind eyes and saw something she hadn't felt in a long time. Trust. She nodded firmly. Thank you. I don't want revenge. I want to rebuild with dignity. My uncle will not be disappointed. Pastor John, who had been invited to witness, clasped her hands gently. This is more than fortune, Emma. This is a calling. Wealth in the wrong hands destroys, but in yours it can heal. Never forget the power of compassion. Emma wiped her tears, straightened her shoulders, and signed the final page. The ink felt like fire on paper, a new chapter burning into existence. As she closed the folder, Miss Adams leaned back, her expression serious. Emma, I must warn you, wealth attracts shadows. People who abandoned you will try to return. You must be prepared. Emma exhaled slowly, her resolve hardening. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Emma thought secrecy would protect her, but the first shadow, her husband, was already plotting his way back into her life. The knock on Emma's door was sharp, desperate. When she opened it, Mark stood there, his eyes swollen with fake tears, his suit wrinkled as though he had been suffering. Without waiting for permission, he pushed inside and dropped to his knees. Emma, he pleaded, grabbing her hands. I made a mistake. I was blind. I let anger and pride destroy us. Please forgive me. Give me another chance. Emma froze. The same man who had humiliated her in court now knelt at her feet. For a brief moment, her heart remembered the years they shared. But then the images of betrayal flooded back. His words, Anna's smug smile, the sting of abandonment. She pulled her hands away slowly. Mark, why now? Why come back after all you've done? Mark forced a trembling smile. Because I realized I cannot live without you. Anna, she's not you. She doesn't understand me like you do. You're my wife, Emma. We belong together. What he didn't know was that Emma already carried her uncle's secret inheritance. She studied his face carefully, and for the first time, she saw not love, only calculation. At a distance, Anna's voice cut through the silence. She had followed him, heels clicking against the pavement as she entered uninvited. Her eyes narrowed at Emma, her words dripping with venom. Don't be fooled, Emma. He's here because he pities you. And maybe you should pity yourself. Alone, abandoned, forgotten. But when Mark turned sharply and hissed, Anna, not now! Emma caught the flicker of truth. This was not about love. This was about manipulation. Later that night, in the shadows of a bar, Lucas slapped Mark's back again, smirking. You're playing the right game, my friend. If she still has anything left, money, family, sympathy, grab it. Don't let her slip away. A smart man always knows how to circle back to the nest. And Anna, though bitter, whispered under her breath to Mark as they walked home. You'd better get something out of her. Otherwise, you'll drag me down with your failures. Emma, however, stood firm. When Mark visited again the next day, she didn't raise her voice or cry. She looked him in the eyes with calm strength. Mark, you chose to throw me away. You don't get to walk back into my life as if nothing happened. My door is not open for betrayal twice. His face darkened, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He clenched his fist but forced a smile, masking his anger. You'll regret this, Emma. No one turns me away. Emma closed the door gently, her heart heavy but steady. For the first time, she was not begging him to stay. She was the one who ended the conversation. Emma thought his games ended at her doorstep, but greed has a way of exposing itself, and soon the mask of wealth around Mark and Anna would begin to crumble. The necklace sparkled like fire under the sunlight as Anna paraded through the market, her chin high, her laughter loud. She waved her hand so everyone could see the diamond bracelet on her wrist. Mark knows how to take care of me, she boasted, tossing her hair. Not like some women who end up with nothing but ashes. Lydia, her closest friend, walked beside her, fanning her with flattery. You've risen, Anna. Look at you now. Jewelry, dresses, respect. Stick with Mark and you'll never know poverty again. But whispers trailed behind them. Old customers and neighbors shook their heads. All that money? Where does it come from? Didn't Mark abandon his wife in shame? He walks like a king, but his pockets look thin. Anna ignored the whispers, basking in the illusion of wealth. But when she returned home, reality struck. Bills piled on the table. Creditors had called twice that morning. Mark sat slumped in a chair, sweat on his brow, staring at empty accounts. "Mark!" Anna snapped, throwing her bag on the floor. "We can't keep living like this. Where's the money?" "You promised me comfort." Mark's voice cracked with anger. "Do you think fortune falls from the sky? I'm doing everything I can. I just need time." Lucas barged in without knocking, his grin careless. "My friend, you're losing control. The facade is slipping. Everyone's starting to whisper that you're drowning. You'd better fix it, or soon no one will respect you." Mark rubbed his temples, rage boiling under his skin. "It's Emma's fault," he muttered bitterly. "If she hadn't failed, I wouldn't be here. She owes me. She still owes me." Anna crossed her arms. "Stop blaming her. You wanted me, not her. If you can't provide, maybe I need to look elsewhere." The words cut through him like a blade, but he forced a laugh, masking his fear. "You wouldn't dare." Lydia, sensing the tension, smirked. "Anna, don't waste your beauty on empty pockets. A woman like you deserves real wealth, not promises that crumble." Anna's eyes darkened, and though she said nothing, the seed of betrayal was planted. Meanwhile, in the streets, old customers who once admired Emma whispered about Mark. "He walks proud, but he's hollow. At least Emma, even in failure, worked with honesty. He only rides on illusions." The community that once mocked Emma now began to shift their gaze, not in pity, but in quiet recognition of the difference between resilience and arrogance. That evening, Mark stormed into his apartment, slamming the door. Anna sat by the window, her necklace glinting in the dim light, her eyes cold. She no longer looked like a partner. She looked like a woman waiting for her chance to escape. And Mark, though still defiant, felt the first crack in the empire he thought he had built. Emma didn't know it yet, but while greed was eating Mark alive, Anna was already preparing the sharpest betrayal of all. The slap of a credit card against the waiter's tray rang through the restaurant. Mark reached into his pocket with shaking hands, but his wallet was empty. The waiter frowned. "Sir, your card has been declined." Gasps rippled through the crowded dining hall. Heads turned, whispers spread. Mark's face flushed with shame. He slammed the useless card on the table, stammering, "Run it again!" But Anna was already standing, her red dress shimmering under the chandeliers. With a sly smile, she slipped another man's black card into the waiter's hand. The man, a wealthy investor she had been secretly meeting, leaned back in his chair, his arms sliding around Anna's waist as though she already belonged to him. The whispers grew louder. "Isn't that Mark's mistress? With another man?" So the rumors were true. Mark's jaw dropped. "Anna, what are you doing?" Anna's eyes turned cold, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I'm doing what you failed to do, Mark. Choosing security. You thought I'd wait forever while you drown in debt? I need a man who can provide, not one who hides behind excuses." The room fell silent as the investor rose, placing a heavy hand on Mark's shoulder. "She's with me now. You should take your pride and leave before you embarrass yourself further." Mark's fist shook, rage boiling in his chest. "Anna, after everything I gave you," she laughed cruelly. "Everything? You gave me lies, empty pockets, false promises. You thought you were better than Emma, but at least she worked. You're nothing without women to carry you." Her words hit like hammers. The same lips that once whispered loyalty now tore him apart in front of strangers. Lucas, Mark's so-called friend, who had encouraged his arrogance for months, stepped back from the table, muttering, "I don't mix with losers." He left without a glance, abandoning him as quickly as he once cheered him. Mark stood frozen, humiliated, stripped of dignity. He could hear the whispers stabbing his pride. Abandoned by the mistress, just like he abandoned his wife. Anna leaned closer, her perfume filling his lungs like poison. "You threw Emma away thinking you were winning. But now, Mark, you've lost everything. And this time, no one will take you back." With that, she walked out arm in arm with her new man, leaving Mark alone at the table. Eyes burning, pride shattered, pockets empty. The waiter placed the declined card back in front of him, and the entire hall erupted in quiet laughter. Mark sank into his chair, hands gripping his hair, realizing for the first time what betrayal tasted like. Emma had no idea that while Mark sank into ruin, her true circle of loyalty was about to shine brighter than ever, starting with the smallest act of honesty from an unexpected hand. The purse hit the dusty ground, spilling coins and papers across the busy street. Emma gasped, bending quickly to gather them. But before her trembling hands could reach, a small figure darted in. A barefoot child vendor, no older than 10, carrying a tray of roasted groundnuts on his head, knelt down and carefully picked up each coin. His little fingers placed everything back into the purse before offering it to her with a shy smile. "Ma, you dropped this," he said softly. Emma blinked, stunned by the honesty. Many would have snatched the money and run, but this child, who clearly had so little, returned every coin. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "Thank you, son. You don't know how much this means." The boy nodded humbly and slipped back into the crowd, his small frame disappearing, but leaving Emma's heart stirred. That act of innocence felt like a seed of hope, proof that not everyone was cruel. Later that day, James arrived at her door carrying a bag of supplies. He had been helping quietly without fanfare, but now he placed the bag in front of her with a determined look. "Emma, it's time you started again. You can't stay in these ashes forever. Let me help you rebuild." Emma hesitated. "James, I don't want to be a burden. You've done enough." But James shook his head, his voice steady. "You're not a burden. You're family. And when family stands together, nothing is impossible." Miriam, faithful as ever, stepped in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "He's right, child. You can start small. Even ashes can be used to grow something new. Let us carry this with you." Emma looked at the two of them, her cousin and her caregiver, and felt her heart swell. Mark had abandoned her, Anna had betrayed her, her aunt had scorned her, but here stood people who refused to leave. Their loyalty was not loud, but it was real. That night, as she laid her head down, Emma reflected on the day. The small boy's honesty, James's quiet strength, Miriam's steady comfort. These were treasures money could never buy. She whispered into the silence, "I may have been broken, but I am not alone." Yet outside, neighbors still whispered, though their tone was shifting. Some spoke in disbelief. "She still tries to rise? After all she's lost?" Others murmured with cautious respect. "Maybe she has more strength than we thought." Emma didn't know it, but her steps were already planting the roots of a new beginning. And the very next morning, she would take the boldest step since her world had fallen apart. Emma thought loyalty was enough, but soon resilience itself would take shape, and her ashes would begin to glow with life again. The hammer struck wood, echoing through the small rented space Emma had chosen. Dust rose in the air as workers nailed shelves together. The room was hot, crowded, and far from perfect, but to Emma it felt like life itself was returning. She stood in the doorway, watching the transformation with tears glistening in her eyes. "Are you sure about this, Emma?" James asked, carrying in a heavy box of fabric. Sweat glistened on his forehead, but his voice carried quiet strength. Emma nodded firmly. "Yes, it doesn't have to be big, it just has to begin." Her first employees were not professionals. They were women who had been mocked as worthless. A widowed mother, a crippled vendor, a young girl once abandoned in the streets. Emma welcomed them with open arms. "You are not broken," she told them on the first day. "Here your hands will create beauty. Here you will stand tall." The women cried, some clutching her hands, others simply bowing their heads in gratitude. For Emma, it was more than business. It was dignity being reborn. Old customers, hearing whispers that Emma was trying again, drifted back one by one. At first they came hesitantly, unsure if her strength could last. But when they saw her designs, carefully crafted from scraps and salvaged cloth, their hearts softened. "This is the same Emma," one customer said with a smile, "but stronger." Another added, "Her clothes carry something new. Hope." Pastor John visited the small shop one afternoon, his gentle eyes shining. He stood before the workers and customers, raising his hands. "What rises from ashes is not just fabric or business," he said softly, but light. Emma, you are showing us that brokenness can still bless the world. Emma bowed her head, her heart swelling with quiet pride. She no longer sought applause. She sought purpose. And slowly the gossip of the neighborhood began to change. The whispers that once mocked her now carried wonder. She is rising, they murmured, even after all she lost. She stands again. But late that night, as Emma closed the shop, she paused by the half-burnt signboard she had saved from the ruins of her old boutique. She leaned it against the wall, her hand brushing its scorched edges. It was a symbol of all she had endured, and all she was becoming. In the distance, a shadow lingered, someone watching quietly as she locked the door. Emma did not see it, but the eyes that glared at her held no joy, only envy and greed. Emma believed resilience was enough, but her generosity, the very heart of her uncle's wish, was about to change her path forever. The hall exploded with camera flashes as Emma stepped onto the grand stage of the city hall. The crowd surged forward, chanting her name. Mothers she had fed held their children high, vendors raised their baskets, and donors clapped until their palms burned. Naomi, the journalist, stood at the podium, her voice echoing with power. Once mocked, once abandoned, once humiliated in court, Emma has risen. From ashes, she built a new dawn for us all. She is not just a survivor, she is a leader. The applause shook the hall. Emma stood in a simple black dress, her posture calm yet unshakable. She lifted her hand, and the hall grew quiet. I was betrayed, she began, her voice steady. But betrayal did not end me. I was broken, but brokenness became my teacher. Today I stand not because of wealth, but because of grace. Grace to rise, grace to forgive, grace to give. The crowd roared, their cheers rising like thunder. Tears streamed down cheeks. Suddenly a figure stumbled forward from the crowd. Gasps filled the hall. It was Mark. His once proud suit was torn, his face hollow with shame, his eyes red from sleepless nights. He collapsed to his knees before her. Emma, he sobbed, his voice breaking. Please forgive me. I was a fool. Anna betrayed me. My friends abandoned me, and I have nothing left. I was blind. Blind to your worth. Take me back. The hall went silent, every ear straining for her reply. Emma's chest tightened, memories rushing back. The fire, the court, the insults, the loneliness. She bent slightly, her face gentle but firm. Mark, I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to let bitterness poison me. But you cannot return. My life is no longer yours to destroy. Mark clutched at her dress, begging, Emma, please. She stepped back, her voice calm but final. You chose pride over love, betrayal over loyalty. Now, you must live with what you chose. The hall erupted in cheers louder than before. Beneficiaries wept openly, neighbors clapped, and even Naomi wiped her eyes as she scribbled her final headline. Forgiveness with dignity, the woman who chose grace over revenge. At the foundation's entrance, workers unveiled the charred signboard Emma had saved from her burnt boutique. Its blackened edges glistened under the lights, a symbol of pain reborn into purpose. Emma touched it gently, then turned to the crowd. This is our new beginning. The cheers rose again, thunder shaking the roof, echoing into the streets. Emma stood tall, not as the broken woman Mark once spat on, but as a beacon no shadow could ever silence again. Emma thought the triumph ended on stage, but the truest victory was still ahead. The quiet legacy of generosity that would outlive even her own story. The morning sun lit up the community hall like gold. Trucks lined the street outside, filled with bags of rice, boxes of fabric, and crates of food. Crowds pressed forward, not to whisper or mock as they once had, but to receive with gratitude. Emma stood at the doorway, her hands steady as she welcomed each family. Mothers clutched her hands with tears in their eyes. Fathers bowed in respect. Children hugged her legs with innocent joy. One young widow cried openly as Emma placed a basket in her arms. I thought no one remembered us, she whispered, but you came. Emma smiled gently. You are not forgotten. None of you are. Inside, workers, Many of them the same marginalized women Emma had hired, sorted supplies with laughter and dignity. What had once been broken lives were now the heartbeat of her foundation. Miriam moved among them, her steady hands guiding and comforting. James carried heavy crates, his quiet loyalty as present as the air itself. And in the corner, Naomi scribbled furiously into her notebook, her eyes shining. She had written scandals before, but this story was different. It was not about shame. It was about light. The woman who forgave, Naomi whispered to herself, and the woman who gave back. Donors, stirred by Emma's humility, began to pledge support. Men and women of wealth stood in line, not to be praised, but to join her mission. The foundation was no longer just Emma's dream. It was becoming a movement. As the hall emptied, Emma sat on a wooden bench, her eyes scanning the faces around her. She remembered the fire, the courtroom, the betrayal. She remembered the nights she cried herself to sleep, thinking she was alone. Now in place of silence, there was laughter. In place of shame, there was honor. In place of betrayal, there was loyalty. James sat beside her, watching the children play outside. "You did it, Emma," he said softly. "You turned pain into something beautiful." Emma shook her head gently. "Not me alone. My uncle believed in me. You stood by me. Miriam carried me. Strangers reminded me of honesty. All I did was choose to rise." She looked toward the signboard of her old boutique, now hanging proudly at the foundation's entrance. The charred wood glistened in the sunlight, a symbol of ashes turned into life. Emma whispered, almost to herself, "This is not revenge. This is rebirth." As the wind brushed her face, children's laughter echoing in the distance, Emma knew her journey was far from over. But this chapter, the one born in betrayal, had closed in victory. She stood, her voice steady, her heart full. This is not the end. This is only the beginning. What began as a story of betrayal had become a story of legacy. A reminder that true power lies not in revenge, but in the courage to rebuild and give.